Hi, I'm Nikki, and on the other side is a noted immigration attorney, Cyrus Mehta. He's back with us. He's spoken often and with a great deal of eloquence on a variety of subjects. Most recently, he spoke on the RAISE Act, which is not yet an act, but when it came up, he explained to our viewers what it meant, what are the risks if it goes through, etc. Today, we are back, and we are talking about how Trump has pulled the plug on DACA, which is Deferred Action on Childhood Arrivals, which is essentially a temporary protection for young illegals. But now that he's pulled the plug, what is the legal situation? I'd like Mr. Mehta to explain to our viewers. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Nikki, for having me on the show again. It's always a pleasure to appear on the show. I enjoy it very much. The DACA cancellation announcement has been met with a lot of shock and emotion because there are 800,000 young adults who were beneficiaries of deferred action. And what it basically means is that their removal from the United States is deferred, and they can apply for work authorization and remain here, go to school, get jobs. Since 2012, when President Obama implemented the DACA program, hundreds of thousands of young people have benefited. They've come into the legal system, they've gotten jobs, they've enhanced their careers, and most important of all, they have also contributed to the United States. They've contributed to its economy, to scientific research, and to other professional fields of endeavor. It therefore came as a complete shock when yesterday, President Trump, through his Attorney General Jeff Sessions, said that they were going to rescind DACA. It's not completely rescinded. There is going to be a wind down period. And that's very important to know, because those who are already authorized under DACA can remain authorized. And there's been a 6-month reprieve. If your work authorization expires before March 5th, 2018, you can apply for an additional 2 years, but you must file that application by October 5th, 2017. If your work authorization expires after March 5th, 2018, you're out of luck. You can only remain in the program for the next 6 months, which is till March 5, 2018.
Mm-hmm. Okay, there is one specific issue I want to bring your attention to. So DHS has put out this long note on frequently asked questions, and it says, I'm reading out, due to the anticipated costs and administrative burdens associated with rejecting all pending initial requests, USCIS will adjudicate on an individual case-by-case basis all properly filed DACA initial requests that have been accepted as of September 5th, 2017. Does this mean that anyone who has missed the yesterday's cutoff doesn't get in?
That is correct. Those who were never in the system, but if they filed by yesterday, they're still there. They're still in the system. But as of today, if you never applied for DACA, you're cut off. You don't have the ability to now file under the program.
Okay, so just to reiterate, it means the October deadline is only relevant to those who have met the September 5th deadline.
That is correct. Those who were already in the system prior to September 5th, the October 5th deadline is only applicable to them for purposes of renewal and on a limited basis, only if your work cards will expire before March 5th, 2018.
Okay, so now this morning earlier, we spoke to some people who run a South Asian advocacy group who are generally talking about, how many Indians will be affected, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of numbers are floating around, but what we seem to know is about 5,000 to 6,000 Indians and Pakistanis will be affected, probably more. What do they do? What is their legal standing today? If you can explain what happens between today and 6 months later, what do they do?
Clearly, if you're already in the system and you have a work authorization, it's going to remain valid until it expires. If it's expiring before March 5th of next year, then apply for a renewal for an additional 2 years before October 5th. You will get a 2-year reprieve. So that's the best advice we can give for people who are already in the system, that those who can take advantage of getting an extension for 2 years, please do so. After that, you have to look at other options of getting into the immigration system in other ways. So if you are planning to get married to a US citizen, or if you're going to get sponsored through an employer or to another relative, there may be ways to get into the system. But if you are a DACA recipient and you were here unlawfully, most likely if you leave the country, you're going to trigger the 10-year bar, because in order to get a green card, you may have to leave the United States in order to get that immigrant visa to come back, and you're going to trigger the 10-year bar. The only time when you don't trigger the 10-year bar is if you're adjusting your status by virtue of marrying a US citizen and you were inspected into the country. Under those circumstances, you can get your green card here in the US, but in all other circumstances, you have to leave and then you trigger the 10-year bar. And then you have to think of getting a waiver of the 10-year bar. You can only get a waiver of the 10-year bar if you have a qualifying relative and you can show extreme hardship to that relative.
Okay, so what does it mean when Trump says, or the White House says, that it is up to Congress to take up and pass legislation helping DACA beneficiaries? One bill introduced this year would provide a path to legal permanent residency. When they say it is up to Congress, like last time you explained to us what is a supermajority. So if you can simplify that and explain, what does it mean?
Yeah, what it means is that this was an executive action taken by Obama. And unfortunately, everything that Obama has done, Trump is trying to overturn. Whether this will benefit him historically in the years to come remains to be seen. But he seems to be trying to undo everything that Obama has done. What he's trying to say is that Obama's actions were not constitutional. They were not authorized by the Immigration Act. People may disagree with that, but that's Trump's position. And he's saying that Congress now has to pass legislation, basically a new law, that would help these people who were previously benefited under President Obama's executive action known as DACA. So the question is, will Congress be able to pass legislation that will help these DACA beneficiaries? Theoretically, one would imagine, yes, it would be very easy. Congress could actually pass the bill in one morning. The problem with immigration is that it's always a political football. It's a very contentious issue. If you do propose a clean bill just to benefit DACA beneficiaries, I can imagine many other people trying to throw in other provisions. They may want to bring in the border wall. That's one of Trump's pet projects. They may want to bring in more enforcement. They may want to bring in more checks against illegal immigration, such as E-Verify. And once you try to bring in all these other provisions, they're known as poison pills. And then the initial bill that was supposed to be a clean bill just to benefit these young people will fall apart. Congress has tried for the last 15 years to pass a dream bill. It's known as a dream bill because these young kids are known as dreamers. That's how they like to call themselves, and it's a wonderful term. So the dream bill has been tried many times in the Senate and in the House, and it has always failed. It remains to be seen whether it will succeed this time. I hope it does, but immigration is a toxic issue, and people want to throw in their own pet projects, including the president. The president might say that I'm not willing to sign a clean bill unless you include my wall in it.
Yeah, that's implicit. I think that's a lot of stuff has not been included in the statement, but there's a lot that's implicit. Like, for example, you know, where all this is going. Last time you talked about the RAISE Act. You talked about the points program. It seems to be taking us back to the pre-1965 immigration situation, really. All of this taken together, right?
Yes, and I think there is an agenda here because the people in the White House who control immigration basically want to curtail legal immigration somehow or the other. If they can't get it through in Congress and they can't change the rules, they try to do it through measures like rescinding DACA or making the pathway to getting a green card under the existing system more difficult. For example, they've just announced that all adjustment applicants will now be subject to a personal interview. Formerly, this was discretionary, the interview process. There's no need to interview everybody if it's a clean application. If everybody's now going to get interviewed, you can well imagine the delays that will cause in the system. And it will slow down the green card process. They're trying to slow down legal immigration, and rescinding DACA is one of the strategies. And to go back to your point as to whether this is implicit, yes, it is, because Trump was saying, I'm going to punt this to Congress. Let Congress do its job and Congress will resolve this. DACA applicants, don't worry, we'll try to find a solution. But what's implicit is that there may be no easy solution, because to pass an immigration bill is not easy. To pass a clean bill for just dreamers is theoretically going to be very difficult. I hope we can achieve it, but as I said, people are going to throw in all their poison pills. People will want more border enforcement. The administration may call for the wall. And once you try to make your demands, then you're not going to get the super majority to agree, and the whole proposal will fall apart in Congress.
Yeah, so Trump is actually on board Air Force One going to Dakota. So his statement just came in, and I'm reading from there. So on board the plane, people have asked him about DACA. And so somebody has asked him, what did you mean when you said you wanted to revisit the issue in 6 months? And he says, well, we'll see what happens. I want to see what happens in Congress. I have a feeling that's not going to be necessary. What's implicit here? What does that mean?
That it's not going to be necessary for him to revisit the issue.
Yeah.
I think what happened was that Trump likes to feel loved by everybody. And he realized at the end of yesterday that he had angered a lot of people, including people in the Republican Party. Probably people even in his own family, like his daughter and son-in-law, were for the Dreamers. They were against rescinding DACA. But the hardliners like Steve Miller and Jeff Sessions obviously convinced Trump that it was not worth standing for DACA. So Trump was conflicted, and that's how he sent out that tweet saying he will revisit the issue. The question, it's kind of surprising, because his attorney general said that they've rescinded the DACA policy once and for all, forever. And now he's saying he'll revisit the issue. I don't know. We don't know what he means. He's very erratic, and he's hoping that Congress will pass some DREAM Act legislation. I heard that he made some deal with the Democratic leaders, Schumer and Pelosi, regarding the debt ceiling and Harvey relief. And as part of those negotiations, they did speak about a clean DREAM Act bill. Let's hope it is true. But I'm a skeptic, and it may not come true to fruition in Congress. Yeah, you're right. I mean, it seems too simplistic because there are too many wheels within wheels. Like someone's asked him on the same plane, do you want a pathway to citizenship for these DACA recipients? And he says, that's going to be discussed later, but we want to talk about only legal right now. So I don't know what he means by that, because the fact of the matter is that the DACA recipients started off here being in an undocumented capacity, and they've got legal authorization to remain here. They deserve that legal authorization because they've done nothing wrong, and they should not be blamed for falling out of status or coming illegally into the country because their parents brought them here. And if they've been here for so many years, from a policy point of view, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't reflect truly on the values of this nation. This nation has always been a generous nation. It's been a nation of immigrants. You don't want to basically pull the rug against young aspiring adults who are successful and who will only become more successful and will benefit the United States. And the point that needs to be made is that you don't need to be a successful immigrant. The fact that you've been here, the fact that you've survived, the fact that you can make a living, you've studied here, that in itself is great. You don't need to be a rocket scientist in order to get a benefit as an immigrant.
You know, the White House, when it says they're saying the program was on shaky legal ground and would not have survived legal challenges in the courts. What do they mean when they say it was on shaky legal ground? Are they basically, yes, it is an attempt to erase the Obama legacy, but what other than that? What do they mean?
That's because 12 state attorney generals have threatened to sue on DACA. And if they had done that in the previous administration, Obama's Justice Department would have said, bring it on and we will fight you. But Jeff Sessions doesn't want to fight them because they're part of the same party, and probably, you know, in his heart of hearts, Jeff Sessions doesn't like DACA. And he agrees with the potential plaintiffs, who are the 12 states, and he agrees that it may be unconstitutional. It's a matter of debate. It's not yet been finally settled. The Fifth Circuit ruled against Obama's similar plan called DAPA, but again, that was on a preliminary injunction. It was not on the final merits. When it went to the Supreme Court, it was a divided 4-4, so it was never resolved at the Supreme Court. Therefore, it is wrong to say with certainty that DACA is on shaky constitutional grounds. What the correct thing was for Sessions to have done was to have contested the lawsuit, and contested it in the sense that even if he lost at the first level in district court, he could have appealed it and then taken it to the Supreme Court. But Jeff Sessions is made of different stuff than Eric Holder and Loretta Lynch, who were Obama's attorney generals.
Yeah.
And that's what he meant, saying that it's on shaky ground. But just as Jeff Sessions has said that DACA is on shaky grounds, just a few minutes before we went on air, many states have now sued the Trump administration for rescinding our DACA. New York, Washington, Maryland, and DC, and many other states have joined in. And I think this is a very interesting lawsuit, because what this lawsuit alleges is that you can't just arbitrarily rescind. If you've created expectations, you have to go through a more elaborate process to rescind a program. But most interesting is that this sort of lawsuit that has been filed can only occur in the Trump era and against Mr. Trump. Just like in the travel ban, when he made statements saying that he will basically create a complete ban against Muslims, and he disparaged Muslims from coming into the United States, and those words were used against him. He has also made similar disparaging remarks against people coming from Mexico, against Hispanics. He has made disparaging remarks against judges. If you look at the lawsuit, I quickly looked at it, but those same arguments are being made, that this rescission is based on unconstitutional grounds. It's because there is animus against Latinos, and most DACA recipients are from the Latino community.
Yeah.
I think it's a very interesting argument, and we'll see where this goes. And we are in very interesting times in the Trump era, because you can actually create these novel arguments that you couldn't create against another president, because other presidents probably would not have been disparaging. Even if they wanted to pull the plug, they wouldn't have made these disparaging remarks. But Trump has gone on record to say that Mexicans coming across the border are rapists. He called them in this Phoenix rally that they're filth, they're vomit. All those statements are now going to be used against Trump in this lawsuit.
Last question, Mr. Mehta. When you, like you said, New York governor already said he would sue if this happens, and you're saying, they've just sued. How does this go in court? Like, what happens? Just give us a simplistic.
Well, you file a lawsuit. You allow the court to then allow the other side to respond, which is the government.
Okay.
And then you're going to ask for some kind of preliminary injunction or a temporary restraining order to prevent the Attorney General from rescinding DACA until there is a resolution on the merits of the case. That's what always happens. Even in the lawsuit against Obama, they asked for a preliminary injunction. There's not been a final determination on the merits as yet. And that's how it's going to play out. You're going to ask for a preliminary injunction. And if the court's granted, we may see DACA reinstated.
Correct. Correct. So even if Trump wants it to be ended, it's not going to come to him neatly tied up with a bow. Correct?
At this point of time, with this lawsuit in courts that may be favorable to the plaintiffs, I think that there is a lot of scope that Trump might be opposed. And there is a good chance that the lawsuit will not be deemed as frivolous, and we might see some interesting outcome.
Wow. Excellent. Thanks so much, Mr. Mehta. Pleasure talking to you.
Always a pleasure.
Bye.
Goodbye.